A tonal yelling introduction. This is Beer Thunder, and I'm clearly doing this from a script. I know exactly what I'm going to say ahead of time because this is a very scripted and well put together War Thunder sim video, and this is the Rafale, the Rafalling out of the sky, because I forgot to engage the flight control system before I took off and decided to change controls while on the takeoff roll. But, you know, I recover that, and we do it in style, and we're going to fly out the Rafale. And the Rafale is the brand new French thing that was added to the French tech tree behind the Mirage 2000 and serves as a counterpart to the Eurofighter and is the new meta-defining Cope and Seeds mobile in Air Sim. And to be honest, this plane has a lot going for it. It's a very strong plane. It's very good. It brings a lot to the table. It improves on a lot of the flight performance of the Mirage 2000. Kind of brings F-16A Block 10 levels of maneuverability into a platform that carries 8 radar missiles, 8 of the Micas, which they're really good at close range, they're really good at medium range, they're really pretty bad at longer ranges. But really, with the way that Sim has been playing out, really doesn't seem to affect it. On top of that, this is the first plane in the game that has an active electronically scanned array radar, which in theory is this revolutionary thing that means that it's scanning all of the time, all of the areas, and has instant update refresh rate, and is supposed to be the best thing in the game, the best thing since sliced bread, and is one of the things that you're going to see good old Movrin in his Typhoon FGA whatever mauled about, because that guy dies one time and just spends like the next like 25 minutes just like typing up an essay in chat. And that's really one of my favorite thing about this plane. Isn't even just the plane itself, it's just the way that people react to it. And oh my god, British mains are the funniest people in the world. Just hilarious levels of coping. Because at one point the British tech tree for top tier era was not very good. Also, that was like a year to 2 years ago at this point. Britain has had the Gripen. The Gripen's been like the best or one of the best planes in the game for a solid year. They just got the Tornado, or the corrections, the Typhoon. Sorry, I get all the weather terms mixed up. They got the Typhoon, and they got the one with IRST, and it's the best flight performance in the game, period. Even the Rafale, even though the Rafale has really strong flight performance, it is kind of a top 3, top 4 airframe in the game right now, at least for top tier. If you just looked at things in terms of flight performance, the Typhoon just blows everything out of the water in pretty much every regard. Typhoon versus Rafale, close in dogfight, not even close. Even with Micas, it doesn't really matter if you know kind of like how to like force a closer aspect and not just go head on in the second turn with the Rafale. Rafale, really good against everything that's not a Typhoon. Also, your kind of one of your big primary oppositions right now is going to be Typhoons. That's really not that big of a deal though, because the Micas are really, really strong at the thing that they've always been good at, which is close range counter firing, high off bore sight shots, and all of the avionics in this plane really add to that kind of playstyle. This is a plane that you can afford to get up close and personal in, and that is where it is going to be the most at home, or it's going to be most at home until like guns only dogfight against like a Typhoon. Everything else it's more than capable of dealing with. The Gripen can give you problems if the Gripen knows what he's doing. Obviously I already did a video on that, but in kind of the random mix match kind of stew that is AirSB, the Rafale is going to be very strong, and a lot of people are going to say that's overpowered, and I think that there's not necessarily a lot of merit to it, but I understand why that's going to be. And the reason it's going to be is because France right now is capable of being on both teams. And on the situations where France is on red side, where France is paired up with German Typhoons, you kind of have a mix and match of kind of like the two best planes in the game helping each other out, covering each other's weaknesses. And then when you put the Rafale on the blue side, you still get the same thing, where the Rafale is going to cover the weaknesses of the AMRAAM slingers in situations that the AMRAAM slingers are not necessarily as well suited to. The other thing is, a lot of people are going to look at the active electronically scanned array radar, and it's going to be a big old bugaboo for them because they don't really understand how Gaijin has implemented ASA radars. I'm going to call it ASA. It might be ASA, or however you pronounce the acronym, or whatever. The way that it's been implemented within the game is this radar works just like a mechanical radar. As far as target detection goes, when it comes to populating your first targets on your screen, it still has to go through its whole entire scan pattern, has to ping them twice, and then it puts them on. Once it puts them on your screen, once it puts them on TWS, it will continuously keep re-picking the same target. So once they're on the screen, it does a really good job of keeping track of them. But gaining track of them, it's not really that decisive of an advantage. Now, the scan rate of this thing is like pretty fast. Its left to right sweeps are pretty quick, so it does go through its pattern quicker. But also, your scan patterns are taller than they are on some of the other mechanical radars. So your actual kind of like initial target population rate is kind of on par with some of your better scan patterns with your mechanical radars. Like, I don't really think that the target reacquisition time on the Rafale is all that much better than the narrow scan patterns that you can use on the F-16C and the Gripen and stuff. So even when you do like the narrow scan pattern on this thing, you still have kind of like some of the same issues. So some of the little bugaboos about reacquiring targets, refiring is still the same. The way that you use this radar is basically identical. Aside from that, the countermeasures are pretty good. You got a good amount of them, a good bit of chaff. I usually run as many flares as the plane will allow me to, because you do have enough chaff. And with the reworks to kind of the missile guidance logic, basically they enabled angle gating, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that if the missile loses lock from notching and the guidance plane radar can still see you, it will actually just use data link to more or less slam into you. Now, thankfully, the notching technique that I've been using has continued to work, and it has continued to work just fine. Where you turn 90 degrees to the missile, you drop some chaff, and then you do half a loop and you go the other direction. Because if you're sitting in the notch gate, where the radar of the plane, the radar of the missile thinks that you're going left to right, and you notch, it locks the chaff, and then you do like a split S underneath of it, and you go the other way. By the time the radar seeker turns back on, it's looking for you in the direction that it last saw you going, and you're already going the other way. And the way this works also is like you let the missile get like nice and close, and you do that, and then the missile goes the other way, and you can counterfire. That technique still works more or less the same way. So as long as you're notching and then changing direction and not leaving your notch window, you're going to have no problems with notching. And the best way to practice this is really just get you and a buddy, go to a custom game, and just let the guy shoot AMRAAMs at you, and just turn left and right and just do loops until it starts to work. Because really, part of it is not just like understanding like the technique, but you got to practice the technique and get comfortable with it and understand like where it becomes intrinsic. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. And this is why like Movrin in the background is like going to be malding and seething that the guy that I'm like paired up with, some Australian dude, basically Australian's British adjacent, by the way, shoots him in the face with a mic at point blank, and then he notches his AMRAAM, and Movrin's like, my AMRAAMs are missing, blah blah blah, the radar, blah 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 blah. It's like, no, a lot of people that have been playing Sim for a while, a lot of people that have endured the dark days of red side suffering, have gotten a lot of free experience notching, dodging, multipathing, and doing all of the things to counter AMRAAMs. There has been a lot more effort put into that, because if you wanted to play the game for the longest period of time, you just ran the gauntlet of AMRAAMs all of the time, and the people that stayed around got pretty darn good at it. Now, don't let me saying that downplay how effective the plane actually is in Sim, because this is one of the few planes in the game where everything just works the way that it's supposed to, or at least it feels that way. It feels like you have the complete package and you have answers to kind of every situation you find yourself placed in. The RWR is very good. You have 360 degree RWR coverage. You don't have those top and bottom blind spots where you've rolled the plane over just at the wrong angle and the AMRAAM comes in and slams you out of the sky from an angle that you didn't detect. You have the flight performance and the energy retention, the acceleration to kinematically defeat missiles. You have the really good Scorpion HMD that has the network data link between your friendlies that will show you where the friendlies are, which means that if you get into a dogfight and you see a dot without a circle around it, you can look at it and go, hey, that's an enemy. the HMD on this thing is probably the best one in the game right now overall, just because of the way that's implemented with that data link IFF. The Eurofighter one, if it gets the same treatment, if the Eurofighter radar becomes better, which it probably should in the future because of all the bug reports that are pending at some point, like none of the bug reports say, hey, make the Eurofighter radar even worse. All of them say, hey, make it better. The Eurofighter radar, the HMD, that combination might become better in the future, but right now, the Rafale, the situational awareness that you have going into fights is a lot better than most of the other things that you're using. It also means that in those like close range fights where you've got two friendlies that are fighting each other, you look at them, it's just like the A10, it's the same HMD as the A10. You look at them and you go, guy with circle, good guy, guy without circle, bad guy, and then you can decide whether or not to just YOLO a radar missile into the furball and get a team kill anyways, because that's gonna, I mean, it's gonna happen regardless. As far as that, like the only real like weak spot is technically the radar, and the weak spot that the radar has is the same weak spots that all the other radars have, which is at close range with the taller search pattern. If you're reacquiring a target and the first sweep misses the guy, and then it gets to the bottom of the sweep, it has to do its kind of repeating thing. Sometimes you don't get your targets to populate soon enough, and you don't get that advertised instantaneous refresh rate, population rate that you think you would get with an ASA, which is fine. That is probably the best way to balance kind of like the radar stuff. Aside from that, the IRST kind of works more or less the same as the SU-27 one. You don't have the narrow wide pattern of the SU-27. You have like a wide pattern that's tall and a narrow pattern that's also like tall, but overall I think even the search pattern is arguably more useful. You have HMD IR, which is good for keeping track of targets and locking them up. The only thing that the HMD doesn't do that some of the other ones do, like the Gripen HMD and the Eurofighter HMD does, is they will show contacts in the HMD that are not locked, or even if they are locked, when you're actually just using the HMD, which is a nice, useful feature to have. Does it make those HMDs decisively better? No, it just makes them a little bit different. It's kind of like a functionality of like, would you rather have one or the other? And right now, honestly, this is my favorite of the Delta Canards, but also it's always been my favorite of the Delta Canards. The Rafale is like the only one that I think looks good from multiple angles. Like I think the Eurofighter looks good from some angles, and then you get like a picture from the wrong angle, you're like, oh, that's a shit-ass looking plane. The Rafale just looks good at all angles. The Gripen, it looks good at no angles. Like in all honesty, like the Gripen, the way like the engine sticks out like a little bee stinger, like it's just off-putting for me. I just don't like the baby plane. But this is the French baby plane, and really the only downside of the plane is it means that we have to give France credit. And speaking of giving people credit, we do have to give Gaijin a little bit of credit for some of the improvements they have made to not really sim the game mode, but sim the game that you play, which is like the interfaces with your instruments have gotten better. They have added something called sensor point of interest, which means you can open your map up, you scroll in, you click on the bottom right corner, and you can click on a point on the map, and it will slow your targeting pod to that point. So it means that right now, finding convoys in sim, finding ground battles in sim, has never been easier. It's kind of point click, your targeting pod's there, and the targets will be within the field of view of your targeting pod. It makes it really easy. The other improvements that they have made is the MFDs have gotten better. The MFD displays have become like more unique to the planes. Like I've got the RWR in my center screen here, and by default, I think it's on the right, and you can actually change the MFDs and put the right interfaces where you want them and kind of work that way. Same thing with like the radar interfaces. The radar interfaces, they're integrating them so that they're more realistic to the real planes. And when you think about it, like a lot of people shit on Gaijin for not doing things that help sim, but this is like a thing that improves immersion in sim and improves immersion in cockpit view, that if the game was literally just nothing about simulation or anything whatsoever, they wouldn't have to do this, because most people that play the game are playing in third-person view. So it's a nice touch. The guy that's doing the cockpit modeling, the guy that's doing like the flight modeling stuff, that guy cares. The guy that's doing sound design, that guy cares a lot, because sound design in this thing, in this game, changes like once every 3 months. Like that guy must love his job. He's like going around recording things, going, hey, we could bass boost this. Like the gun sound on the Rafale is unique. It is amazing until you kind of listen to it again, and if you know what it sounds like, you're not going to be able to unhear it. So if you know what a popcorn popping machine is, which is like this little plastic thing from like, for me, it's from like the early 2000s, 1990s. Like they had one like the last time I saw one, I was like in elementary school, and it pops popcorn and the popcorn comes up and it hits like the plastic chute and it goes down. The gun on this thing sounds exactly like a popcorn popping machine that's been like sped up. Like you can hear that plasticky like clickiness to it, and it's just bass boosted and sped up, which is really funny. It's like watching One Punch Man season 2 and realizing like the punching sound is just the reload sound from like Counter-Strike for like the M4 or something like that. You're like, oh wow, it's ooh. But I mean, the gun sound will probably change within, I don't know, 3 months. Like they also did the same thing to the Defa for a little bit, where it sounded kind of like a really fast typewriter that was really bad, and then they added some bass to it. So now it sounds good, and within like 2 or 3 months, the sound design will change. So we do have to give them credit where credit is due. The interfaces in Sim are getting better. Same thing in the future. Maybe we do get targeting pod functionality with the MFD screens, where you can adjust your targeting pod and not have to go into the view. That's probably something that might come in the future, because from the looks of things, Gaijin is not really trying to outdo DCS specifically, but it does look like they're making steps to kind of have the potential of eating into the market share of the 16.5 people that play like dedicated flight sims, which is neat. And speaking of neat, we merged with an F-16 here, and we don't have the circle, so we know that he's an enemy. Now, we do not end up engaging the F-16. We only have 2 minutes and 30 seconds of fuel left, so we cut the afterburner and meander our way back to the base, look at the map, look at the player count, and we realize that the game player density is dropped, which means that we can take a multi-role loadout, and I can showcase the hammer bombs. And the hammer bombs are a rocket-assisted bomb. It comes in 3 variations, where you have an IR-guided one that has basically a seeker head, just kind of like a Maverick. You have a GPS-guided one, which is just like a JDAM, and then you have a laser-guided one that also has a GPS thing, where you can kind of do a little bit of both, where it will track moving targets with the laser. Personally, I only run the IR ones, or I run the GPS ones, depending on what kind of ground objective I intend to attack. The GPS ones are really good for stationary targets, and the IR ones are good for moving targets. Now, in the background, you did see me use the sensor point of interest, where like I opened the map, I clicked on the square, clicked on the map, and that's why my targeting pod is already immediately into the ground cluster. I didn't have to faff about in trying to look for the X's and look for the cannon fire and spend a lot of time in the targeting pod view, which is good. And it's really good for top tier, because in top tier, because we're at the middle of the map, we're still going to get pressed while we're doing our ground attack objective. Now, as far as being a ground attacker goes, the Rafale in against tanks in like the tank modes is going to be really good, because the hammer bombs have a lot of range. They're very good. They're very strong. In this mode, because you only have 6 of them, it's not really limited. It means that like everyone gets ground targets to go around for them, and because you can carry 6 Micas, you're still a very effective air-to-air fighter. It's still not like the level of oppression of like an F-15E just clicking like 26 times and just obliterating a ground battle in one pass. Like the GBU-39s, just because of the quantity that other planes can carry, are probably a little bit better for eliminating these stationary ground objectives. Even something like the F-16C, if you dedicate 2 of your pylons to GBU-39s, can carry 8 of them, and last I checked, 8 was bigger than 6. Even the Gripen, if you forego 2 of your pylons, is a total of 16 not hammer bombs, but GBU-39s, and in this you only get 6 of the hammer bombs, which is fine, because we can do this. We get pressed by an F-16, we're going to go to the notch, and we're just going to kind of keep them off to our left at a 90-degree angle, and we're just going to kind of scan for them. We're looking for a black dot. We see the black dot, we're looking for the missile to come off the rails. We are pre-flaring, pre-chaffing, and we do get the merge, and a friendly is going to immediately blow them out of the sky, which is good. I like it when stuff like that happens. I like being able to showcase, like, hey, it's not always just like one guy doing all of the work all the time. Sometimes the friendlies actually do help. Was that a little bit of a risky shot for the 120? Maybe. I have gotten team killed by a good number of 120s recently, but we get back into the ground battle. SPI is still there, and we're going to slew our last hammer bomb off. And the hammer bomb is going to go to the GPS coordinate. It's going to wipe it out, and that's going to be six tanks destroyed, or it might be 5. I think the first one kind of whiffed and just did shrapnel damage, but it's really all there is to it. Like, using the hammer bombs on the ground battles is very intuitive. It's point and click. It's very nice to have. It means that kind of doing the objectives has gotten a lot easier, and it's not shown in this video because I didn't do a convoy objective on Spain. I don't think there was one, or I just didn't really pay attention to it. The convoy objectives, because of sensor point of interest, are a lot easier to do. Now, it doesn't solve the issue of, like, convoys phasing through the ground. Like, you will find them, and you will see that the tank turrets are, like, the only thing that are above ground. Like, the whole vehicle model isn't above ground, like, some of the times. And some of the times it goes to, like, a hill, and you're just like, that's not right. You could do better than that. You could make that work. But, like, the actual pilot to plane interface within War Thunder, especially for Sim, has improved, which is nice. It means that people are, at least some of them are listening. Some of the people that still have kind of like their foot on the gas pedal do have a little bit of passion when it comes to doing some aspects of game development. The other thing that's kind of neat is the Canard modeling for this thing is they at least put, like, more thought into it than they did for the Gripen. Like, the Gripen Canards pitched the wrong direction for the way the plane pitches, because the way the Canards work on the Gripen and the way the Canards work on this is these planes are balanced so that they're unstable, and it basically, in fancy nerd terms, it means that they're heavy in the back end where they want to, like, fall over backwards. And the Canards, if you watch at air shows, like, they actually, like, they pitch the opposite direction, where instead of, like, lifting the nose up, they actually just prevent it from, like, tipping all the way over a lot of the time. And even the F-22 does some of the same stuff with its tailplane. Like, that's one of the natures of, like, the unstable design dynamic. And at least visually, it seems they are trying to model that, even with manual controls, with the sensitivity of the Eurofighter and the Rafale for their ability to kind of, like, stall out and kill themselves in manual controls. Means that maybe stability is not modeled correctly, because it probably isn't, because it's War Thunder. This is an arcade game at the end of the day. It does mean that they have taken some steps to rectify the past issues. The same thing with, like, the way the flight models for Typhoon and Rafale, even though they are the best, it's not like initial first model Gripen, where it's just so much better than everything else, where you have literally no chance. And it's not the same as first model Gripen on a release with 9Ms on Sinai on any flat map was, like, literally just, like, you get sort of close to a merge, you flip on periodic flares, and you're just invulnerable for, like, the next, like, 10 minutes to anything that anyone can fire at you. That's not really the case anymore. That's not the case for this plane. It's still good. It's very, very strong. I like flying it. I'm going to probably fly it a lot in the next, like, 6 months, because it is legitimately one of the aircraft of all time, one of my favorites, and it is one of the nations of all time that can flex to the other side, where I can give blue side a taste of their own medicine. And speaking of that, it's been very fun to watch American players and watch British players and stuff just completely lose their minds over having to fight things that have avionics now, fight things that have parity with them. But even with that parity, even with how overpowered the Mica is in a dogfight, you just saw right there, it locked on chaff. It just went off on its own merry way, and that's going to happen again here. Like, even rear aspect, it's not perfect, but we're gonna get that popcorn gun sound. Like, there's the popcorn gun. Look at the pop. Listen to the popcorn. We're making popcorn here, and then he explodes. And the gun is very strong. The firing time, not very long, so you want to get really close. You don't have the ability to take pot shots like you can with some of the Vulcans with 1,200 rounds or 650 rounds or whatever, however many rounds of ammo they stuff into an F-15. You don't have that ability. But you have everything else. It's very good. It's very fun. And the one thing I don't think I've shown so far is using the AIRST. And That's kind of a difference between the way that me and other people play. Like, if you watch Nimble's gameplay for Rafale, I think he probably sticks to lower altitudes than I do and spends more time in multipathing and is trying to run around and be undetected. With this plane, the way that I play, I don't really want to be undetected. I don't mind if people detect me. Like, please come shoot at me, because it means that you are coming at me faster. It means that I can shoot back sooner, and it means that I can get more kills in a shorter period of time. Now, with all of that being said, one of the biggest benefits to the Rafale and Typhoon being added is kind of the balancing changes and reactions that have taken place in Top Tier Sim. It is no longer USA just kind of obliterating your tickets passively and forcing everyone in your team to quit just by virtue of having more players, more AMRAM slingers, being more user-friendly from the get-go. Now that other nations are starting to get planes that are basically better than F-16C finally, that have performance merits to them that like actual players can use without kind of dedicating a ton of time to quote-unquote getting good, it means that matches they feel a lot better. Like, in all honesty, like, it is not that hard right now to find a top tier game of sim that is reasonably well balanced, or at least you'll see stomps in one side or the other. Usually, France is the wild card. France is the thing that a lot of people don't want to play against right now. You're going to see a lot more blue games with France on blue side now, because France is popular. A lot of people that were F-15E, F-15C spammers are switching to being Typhoon and Rafale spammers, which is a natural kind of consequence of power creep. But it means that at least now the power creep is potentially on both sides, and that is a good thing. It means that USA player count has decreased. It means that red side player count, at least the flexible red side player count, has increased, and it means that Top Tier Sim right now is probably the easiest that it's ever been to get into and have like something of an equitable game experience. It's not perfect. It has all the same flaws that Air Sim has in general, which is that teams do still collapse when things do get uneven. People still do quit when they do bad. That is a natural consequence of the way that the game is structured. But it is no longer the deep, dark, awful days of like trying to fly out like the F4F ice shit-ass dog shit plane in top tier against like multiple F-16s and F-15s all of the time. It was not the move. It was not the move for anyone that was not just a complete masochist. And I did it for a little bit just for viewership purposes, but it's not something that I would have recommended to anyone. And with this new update with Eurofighter and Rafale, this is something that I can make an honest recommendation for. Be like, it's flawed, but the flaws are similar to the rest of the game. So if you've already played War Thunder, you know that it's War Thunder. And we at least have gotten back to a somewhat of a comfortable equilibrium. Now, is stuff in the future going to come and blow power creep out of the water? I don't know. They could add F-22 next update and put USA back on top. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are finally out of the woods, and we're done with the game, and this is just showing the reward screen. I'm doing the event right now to get the Kafir C10, and that's it. That's a Beer Thunder. Like and subscribe so we can get a decal, please.